This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We've got some big games between surprise undefeateds coming up this week in week number 6 in college football. Massive games, surprise games to discuss. We're going to break those down, let you know how to bet those big games, and also break down the best bets across week 6, courtesy of Ed Feng. We'll swing by and break down his numbers for this week. Welcome on into Covering the Spread. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here once again by Dr. Ed Feng. You can find his work at thepowerrank.com and find him on Twitter at thepowerrank. Ed, week number 6 is coming up. We got some big games this weekend. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Looking forward to another awesome college football weekend, NFL weekend. It's always good when we hit these fall weekends.
Yeah, we got to October, and honestly, I didn't expect to be talking to you about a Kansas game in early October, because we try to highlight the 3 biggest games of the week each week here on the show. And I'm not sure Kansas has cracked our list in the 4 or 5 years whenever we've been doing this. So this is the first.
I'm pretty sure we weren't doing the show during the Mark Mangino years.
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure this is the first time we have talked about Kansas Jayhawk football on the show. Maybe basketball. We probably talked a little bit of Kansas basketball.
We've definitely talked basketball, but I think this is also the first week they've had College Game Day, the football version at least, if I recall correctly. So fun times. We didn't get Parker Fleming on to talk TCU. Could have had him on this week instead of a couple weeks ago to talk TCU, but I'm sure Parker has bigger things at hand for this week. I hope he's enjoying, which should be a pretty fun week for TCU. Maybe even a more fun week if they can cover the 7-point spread. We'll talk about that game and Tennessee, LSU, and Utah, UCLA later on today. Before we do that, though, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. We are here every weekday, Monday through Friday, talking a lot of football, some baseball still, some college every Wednesday too. To get all those podcasts as they are posted, make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Also check out the FanDuel YouTube page, each show going up there after the fact as well. Twisted Tea and FanDuel have joined forces to bring you a one-of-a-kind contest series that gives you a chance to compete for your share of thousands of dollars in site credit. Introducing Twisted Tea's College Football Picks, a sports betting-focused contest series that's entirely free to play. The contest is simple. Each college football game will be assigned a money line, spread, and total market with assigned points to each market. All you have to do is make 6 selections based on those 3 markets and earn points for each correct selection you made. If at the end of the day, your score ranks among the best in the contest, you'll be eligible for your share of site credit. Head to FanDuel.com/TwistedTeaPicks and make your picks. And reminder, please drink responsibly. Let's take a look here at week number 6. And as I discussed, we got some surprised undefeateds here and teams exceeding expectations from what we had heading into the preseason. So if you take what you had from a prior expectation to what we've seen so far, pretty big deviation there. When you've got teams like that, where preseason expectations deviate a lot from the prior, how much of your model is what you thought going in? How much is that weighing down their current view of them versus what we've seen so far this year?
Yeah, I mean, there's no definitive answer. I mean, my model has an answer for how it changes based on data from games and other aspects, but there's no definitive answer. You're going to overreact too much on some teams. You're going to underreact on some teams, and that's kind of the art of handicapping and making good bets. So we'll talk about still leaning on some priors, and I'm going to do that more for certain teams and actually certain units on teams than others. But that's where it gets tricky, and you just gotta follow what's going on in the field, know the situation, and just go from there and make your best educated guess.
Now, we talk quite a bit about how you have a new model now that is more reactive to more recent data, the past couple of weeks. I'm assuming then that also means that the prior is less impactful in that model than would have been for a previous model at this point in the year, or is that still going to be pretty similar?
I actually haven't tested it. I haven't looked at correlations from this week in the season to preseason I would guess it gets off of it a little bit faster.
Yeah.
But I don't know for sure, because I mean there's still going to be a lot of teams that are performing essentially like we expected them to perform.
Right.
Michigan is an example of that. They're still 6th through 10th, somewhere around there. And that's what we expected, and we won't get a different answer until maybe they play Penn State or Ohio State at the end of the year.
Yeah, the teams that deviate from expectations tend to be, or like the massive deviations tend to be the outliers more so than the norms. Let's talk about a couple of those outliers and talk about TCU at Kansas right now. TCU, a 7-point favorite, total of 68.5. And Kansas has beaten some decent teams of late, but now has to face another undefeated team in TCU and a very good undefeated team. Can they cover 7 here, or is TCU too tough of a task for these Jayhawks?
Yeah, I mean, I think these are some awesome stories here, right? Lance Leopold going over to Kansas. He got there in the spring of 2001 and didn't even see spring practice. They weren't very good last year, but then they had that huge upset win at Texas towards the end of the season. And now this season, they're just good. The numbers on offense and defense both look good. Jalen Daniels, the quarterback, has led the 27th best offense. When I look at adjusted success rate, they're particularly good at throwing the ball. And the man has 40-1 odds to win the Heisman, which means most likely he won't win it. But that is a remarkable thing for a Kansas quarterback. On defense, they're also pretty good. They're 22nd when I look at my adjusted success rate. And, this is where I'm a little I'm not sure, they brought in a lot of transfers to help a defense that was in the hundreds last year. And, I think the offense is probably a little bit more sustainable. I'm not as sure about the defense. And we can actually talk about like kind of that expectation compared to who they're going to play. So they're playing TCU. And this program has gone through a lot over the last couple of years. They let go a long time. I mean, essentially legendary coach in Gary Patterson, who is considered a defensive mastermind until last year, where his defense couldn't stop anybody. And TCU all of a sudden dropped from, I think, top 5 in 2020 to in the hundreds in 2021. And they decided to part ways, and Gary Patterson isn't there anymore, and Sonny Dykes comes in. But so the offense has been good, and QB Max Duggan has led the 24th best offense when I look at adjusted success rate. And honestly, that's not too much of a surprise. They were 36th last year. They brought back all 3 of their top receivers. Sonny Dykes is a offensive minded coach, so none of that is a surprise. They've actually been really good on defense. They're 28th when I look at my adjusted success rate. And that one's a little bit more interesting, right? Because they were terrible last year, but there's got to be a little institutional memory of a defense that was, regularly top 10 for the decade before. So I kind of feel like I trust that a little bit more than the jump in Kansas's defense. Look, we're all making a lot of guesses here. At the end of the day, my numbers say that TCU is going to win this by almost 8.7 points. And I think I trust that. And I think a lot of the kind of subjective stuff, like, how much am I adjusting here? How much am I adjusting there? Like, do I believe, if I had to believe that any of these offensive or defensive numbers are off, I think I would believe that Kansas' defense is not as good as the numbers suggest they are right now. And if I had confidence that any unit was as good as it is suggested by the numbers, I would believe in TCU's offense, simply because they have the quarterback back, top 3 receivers, offensive-minded coach. So, yeah, I actually like TCU to cover here, -7. I actually like the over as well. I have my numbers have a total of 71.5 in this game. And I think the idea, again, because I believe the most in TCU's offense, that they're that good. And I'm most skeptical that Kansas' defense is that good.
But it's also nice because that sentiment is aligned with the data. It's not as if you are bucking your data. It's, okay, my data says this, and I agree that if it's going to be wrong, it's going to be wrong in the correct direction to back TCU -7. Right. That should probably give you a decent amount of faith. Also, that does relate to the over as well.
Yeah, exactly. And, am I necessarily going to be right about these? I don't know. I mean, I actually made a big deal about how good Washington's defense was in my newsletter. And that didn't work out so well against UCLA. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Also made a big deal, I think. Yeah, didn't I make a big deal last week about how bad Texas A&M's offense was? And they're still bad, but they actually put up some points and did not support the under in that game at all. So, this all these adjusted success rates are based on 4 or 5 games for these teams. There's still a lot of noise there. Honestly, there's still a lot of noise when we go through 12 games.
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
Football is a sport of small samples, and finding the best way to combat those small samples is all we really can do. Success rate seems to be the best way to do so. So it has flaws, but it's still going to be the best solution that we have to an inherent problem across all of football. Let's talk about Tennessee at LSU right now. Tennessee 3-point favorite here, total of 64.5. And LSU did lose to Florida State, but they've won 4 straight since then. Competition level pretty suspect. So how do they measure up to Tennessee based on your numbers?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not that sure that the LSU's competition level is that suspect. At the beginning of the season, I had all of the SEC West teams in the top 25. I think you can make a pretty good argument that Auburn doesn't belong there, and that's who they played last week. But Auburn's not terrible. They're not terrible enough to
be totally
to prevent their coach from getting fired. So that's pretty good. In a pretty rugged SEC West. And Mississippi State is probably a pretty good football team. And LSU managed to beat them. But even with that said, I saw a lot of 3.5s when I looked just this morning. So if FanDuel went back to 3, that is certainly saying something. My model has Tennessee by 3.9. A lot of that's just driven by an offense that's been pretty incredible. Hendon Hooker has led the 4th best offense when I look at adjusted success rate. They've actually been pretty good on defense as well, 38th. And then LSU, they've been pretty good on both sides of the ball. Obviously the high drama with the missed extra point to start the season, but they're 21st on offense, 23rd on defense. I think they do have the talent to support that. The cupboard is always pretty full there. Brian Kelly did go to the portal quite a bit on the defensive, actually on both sides of the ball, with the quarterback and Jalen Daniels as well. So, yeah, there's always going to be talent at LSU. I can definitely see those units being that good. Daniels got dinged up a little bit last week, but he should be good to go in this game. Don't see a ton of value on the side or the total here.
Yeah, the number at FanDuel is -3, but it's also -105 on that -3. So it's actually leaning away from the 3.5 in that regard. I'm seeing a -110 at other spots on the -3 there. So -105, interesting, but you said 3.9 being your number. Not a lot of edge there, but keep a close eye on it. Maybe if it gets to 2.5, you could potentially fire on that one. But at 3, even at -105, I feel like that's probably not quite enough to pull the trigger there. Let's talk about Utah at UCLA. Utah 3.5-point favorites, total 64.5. You mentioned UCLA and kind of lay in the wood last week. Talked to Colin Wilson. He was on our show. He talked up UCLA plus 2.5 against Washington. Can they do it again here? Another slight dog against a very good team.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. And it's really where it's one of these situations where I really need to get off my prior on Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yeah.
It's his 5th year at UCLA as the starter, which is kind of crazy. And, the offense was pretty good last year. I turned on the beginning. I was actually pretty excited about that game before age crept in and I had to go to bed. So I actually saw the first drive and thought he was pretty bad. Even though they did drive it down, they got stuffed on a 4th down near the goal line. But obviously he came back and did a good job. They won the game. And UCLA is 6 when I look at, adjusted success rate. So it's all there for the 5th-year quarterback. So I don't know. I have a hard time kind of backing UCLA. Utah, they are looking pretty good on offense. They're 18th in my adjusted success rate. They are excelling in the pass at 5th, and that's kind of what we expect. We thought Cam Rising was going to be a star at the quarterback position. They're 80th when I look at adjusted success rate on defense. That's a little bit of a surprise. You expect more from Kyle Whittingham teams. So, my numbers have Utah by about 5.5 points here. I would lean that way. Don't necessarily love it because of some of those defensive numbers. And should be a good one out in the Pac-12.
We've seen this number go from 4 to 3.5. Do you think that is a reaction to a high profile win in like kind of an islandy type situation where it was on Friday night? People buying into UCLA based on that. I saw a lot of DTR highlights Saturday morning. He had that step back when he was scoring, when he had the rushing touchdown. The two defenders like ran into each other. Like, could that be generating the UCLA hype, or what's your read on that?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not really sure. I mean, I still think Utah's probably the better team here. I mean, clearly, if you're 3.5 point favorite on the road, you're considered the better team here. But that certainly doesn't mean UCLA can't pull off another win at home.
Sure. If it were to get to 3, would that be enough for you to buy in? Hypothetically, it might not happen.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested at 3. Maybe I would definitely lean towards Utah, and I would have some interest at 3.
Okay, so keep close eyes on that one. It's 3.5 right now, -110 on the Utah side of FanDuel Sportsbook, but we've already seen it move to 3.5. It's a bigger move to get to 3, but we'll see how that one, the market moves on Utah against UCLA. A lot of other games on the board for this week, though, Ed. What are you seeing elsewhere? Week 6 at FanDuel Sportsbook.
So one team that I've been following as an over team is USC. Came into the season with Lincoln Riley as the head coach and Caleb Williams as the quarterback, and Jordan Addison as maybe one of the best receivers in the country. So, it was a game that I bet earlier this week over 63. My numbers have it at about 67. It's gotten up to 66 now, I think, when I checked FanDuel, although everything seems to have changed since I checked 2 hours ago. Might want to check that one again. But, no more value in that one right now. But I would definitely, early in the week, kind of keep my eye on USC, see where that total is. Defensively, they've actually looked pretty decent this year.
Yeah.
So maybe less of an over team than first couple weeks of the season, but still an offense that is going to be pretty explosive, and one that I'm looking to bet the over on.
Yeah, it's back down to 65.5, so it does come down a half point. But
I think that's what it was. This morning.
And you had
I don't think it got to 60. There might have been some 66 at other books, but I think it was 65.5.
Yeah,
and because
you said your number was 67, correct?
66.6.
Okay. So yeah, not a huge gap there, but could be one where you kind of see what the number is for the open on Sunday for the next game and see where they settle in there. But we did go through TCU -7. We have TCU Kansas over 68.5, potentially Utah. We can get that to 3 as well. So I don't know. It's pretty actionable stuff on the board here for this week at FanDuel Sportsbook as well. So I think it should be a fun one across week number 6. That's all we got here for today on covering the spread. But Ed, of course, you are very busy over at the Power Rank and the Football Analytics Show. I used my mug for an espresso again yesterday. Actually sprayed the milk for the cappuccino everywhere because I didn't know how to use the milk foamer thing because I'm a moron who can't read instructions, but I did use the mug. What's going on for you over there and at the Power Rank?
I had Mike Craig on the podcast this week. He's a professional sports bettor and also works with Raz, Right Angle Sports. And he actually gave a pretty detailed look at how Raz goes about generating all their plays every week. And I thought that was really fascinating. So definitely check that out. And obviously talk to Mike about games and some under teams and things like that. So definitely worth checking out. Go check that out at the Football Analytics Show, the podcast, which you can get wherever you get your podcasts, and actually also on YouTube. I'm actually getting a bunch of views on YouTube, which is kind of cool. So just kind of started doing that in the off season, and YouTube's kind of nice because you can just click on the timestamps and it'll take you straight there, which is a pretty cool feature.
The timestamps are always nice. I just feel like it's a pain on our end to like put those in. I'm like,
it is, man. This work.
I don't want to do more work, Ed.
No, I understand. You're doing a podcast every day. You can find someone else on the team to. I
mean, now that I only have one podcast per day as opposed to like whatever it was before, with baseball being done for me at least, like that helps a lot. But Mike Craig, super sharp guy, pro bettor, does a lot of college stuff. Always fun to get his insights. Check that out at the Football Analytics Show and check out Ed's stuff at thepowerrank.com. You can find Ed on Twitter as well at the Power Rank. I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. We are back once again tomorrow. NFL week number 5 breakdown. We'll let you know our favorite bets across week 5, player props coming up your way on Friday as well. We'll talk to you once again soon. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.